Welcome to Timothy's Austin Conversation. Welcome to We Love Video. I'm here with Beau and Jonathan. We're at the last video store in Austin. They're going to show us around this amazing collection of movies that they have curated over the years.
Thank you.
Let's go inside. Right. So as you walk in, what do we got here? This is really cool.
Yeah, I got a little bit of a TV wall here. We're playing just DVDs, VHS. Sometimes it's just what the clerks feel like watching. Sometimes it's we're actually doing quality control when people return discs that, you know, may have skipped or done something else. We want to know whether it's their player or our copy. Okay. So, and then same thing kind of behind the counter where we'll kind of keep some of the old VCRs, and we're trying out different devices there and making sure our VCRs and DVD players all work. In an ideal world, we would love to reach a point in our inventory. We'd love to reach a point in our inventory where we could rent out VCRs, especially since those are something they're not making any more of, and people could actually be able to check out a VCR in addition to a VHS tape someday.
And it also comes with the dongles, the red, yellow, and white things.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's not just, oh, here's your VCR. How do you play this? Because most TVs don't necessarily have that, so we're going to work on that.
Yeah.
Because again, we want people to be able to enjoy it like those.
Yeah, and in addition to like being able to come out and check out, we also have everything from like movie candy through our merch, T-shirts, socks, hats, other specialty merch as it comes along.
Yeah, this is a really cool setup y'all got here. Let's work through here and check out this collection.
Yeah, it kind of starts here with our staff picks and other like partnerships, whether it was Kickstarter donors when we first kind of launched everything in that day, through corporate partnerships, and then just the clerks and shift leads that kind of work in the store nightly on a volunteer basis, and they can just kind of rotate out different titles. So we have everything from the oldest movies you can think of through new copies of Barbie, for instance.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, we're trying to get as many new releases as possible. Okay. So people don't have to be subscribed to every streaming service that exists just to watch a new movie.
Mm-hmm. We actually have one movie, obviously it's not the original cut of this, but we have one film that was made in the 1890s. So we definitely have an extensive collection of over 127,000 individual units, VHS, Blu-ray, DVD, and it's available, yeah.
That's nuts. All right. That's wild that y'all are able to come up with all that.
Yeah.
Working through here.
Yeah, you know, we kind of have the different genres, everything from like drama to comedy, and then it gets a little bit more detailed, you know, documentary to like music documentary, obviously foreign, sci-fi, horror, all the kind of expected genres that you'd want. And this is, so the first two-thirds of the building is essentially all the DVDs and Blu-ray discs.
Okay. Super cool. All right, what's back there? I see some curtains.
Yeah, as you work your way back through some of,
Hey, Michael.
we have everything, art prints from sale and just sort of cool knickknacks through a hangout area that is sometimes occupied and sometimes free for customers to sort of sit and chat. And then once you come through the curtains, you enter what's not only our VHS space, which has about 5,000 to 6,000 VHS currently, but it is also our micro cinema. So we have a 10-foot projector screen over here and 25 seats that were recovered from the Alamo Drafthouse South Lamar, which recently remodeled.
That's awesome. Great, let's sit down and talk about it a little bit further.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so now we're sitting down, Beau and Jonathan. Guys, tell me how this got started. Because I know this is like, we're related to iHeart Video, and now we're We Love Video. How does that?
Yeah, essentially what happened was Conrad, who was the previous owner of I Love Video since its inception in the, I believe, in the late 80s, mid 80s, they closed down early in the pandemic in 2020, and everything kind of just went into storage. Mm-hmm. And he spent a few years trying to sell off the collection for what its value was, but it's hard to find the sustainable business model in a for-profit model. So I was even part of discussions at one point with him in that first year or two about how we could make that work. And there just wasn't really a path forward that anybody saw. And so it felt like a lost cause for a long time. And then there was a lot of online chatter, and people started to kind of come up with this idea of a nonprofit business model, which a few other places, I believe Boston and Seattle, might have video stores that kind of function this way. And then Macy Cotton and her husband Ryan Teal kind of spearheaded this movement of creating it as a nonprofit, and created a Kickstarter campaign where they raised over $100,000 to kind of jumpstart the whole thing, and the community really rallied behind it, and then it's just sort of like set off from there.
That's awesome. How'd you meet Conrad?
Originally, I mean, I've been a fan of I Love Video since I moved here. I was 20 years old, and used to go visit the I Love Video on Guadalupe and walk next door to Spider House Cafe, which he also owned. And then eventually I was working on the Night Owl podcast with a good friend of mine, Stephen Beau, who knew Conrad because he'd investigated for his show, The Night Owl. And Conrad was always a big supporter of what we were doing, and he actually let us use an empty defunct space at Spider House that we had turned into a shop space and office space and recording space, and I remodeled it in January and February of 2020. Oh, wow. And then immediately kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
But we had kind of maintained a little bit of a friendship talking about that during. Yeah.
Okay. And so with this collection, did y'all purchase it from him, and then like how does that work? How did you come up with all this material that you've got here?
Yeah, essentially what Macy and Ryan worked out with Conrad was a deal it's similar to a rent to own of the collection, and being a 501c3 nonprofit, the video store, everything goes back into the store, and anything we don't need, in theory, goes to Conrad first and foremost, until the collection is eventually paid off in full value, in which case the nonprofit would essentially own the collection.
I see.
And that's something we're actually really proud of, is the fact that every penny goes back. We have the staff are all volunteer, the board is all volunteers, because we want to preserve this collection, preserve this space, and then as hopefully in the future, this is a long-term plan, maybe get a second location to where we can have more of the collection out, because this is only about a sixth of the entire collection, which we would love to have more, but they try to put 127,000 units constantly growing into this space. It's just not physically possible.
No, that's nuts. This is only a sixth of the collection, and
yeah, and it would be even more in storage if we didn't have to put a sign on the store that says, please don't leave donations at the door, because I'll show up and there would be a garbage bag, a laundry basket, there'll be all sorts of people just donating DVDs and VHS just constantly. And we're kind of like, let's slow down, because everything's a volunteer effort and we still have an inventory and everything. The original system was very old school, binders, and so we needed to input it in the digital age. So volunteers sat here for countless hours. I mean, dozens of volunteers, hundreds of hours each, inventorying it for many months while the space was being built. And even then, we still don't have the majority of our collection inventoried online yet.
Crazy. That's crazy. What would you say the most common form, or I guess it's really only DVDs and VHS, right?
We also have Blu-ray and
Blu-ray. Okay. What's the biggest percentage of the collection? Is it mostly VHS?
Yeah, the DVDs I would say account for the mass majority.
DVDs, okay.
Not only was just more of them produced over time, more of them hold up over time. They're a little bit more permanent, whereas tapes start to deteriorate over time, and the demand kind of went away for tapes as well. So I can't say how many VHS versus DVDs are in storage, but we know we prioritized putting significantly more DVDs out in the front. So if there was it's kind of a guess right now, but I'd say if there's 20,000 DVDs up front and about 5,000 VHS tapes here in the back, that's about what we have of our collection in store.
Where we are, there's 5,000 in this room?
Roughly.
Yeah, roughly. And we still do have a few VHS along the center part of the store as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's kind of forever changing, so we're kind of constantly adapting and changing. So I could say this now, and a month or two from now, things could be kind of drastically different, because we're just kind of figuring it out as we go along, kind of seeing what the demand from our customers basically, plus, the inventory we have. And we like changing out the inventory somewhat as well, and making sure that people come in and have different options.
Yeah. So you're saying the VHS deteriorates. In what way? And are you able to repair that?
Yeah, I mean, much like a cassette tape, it's one of those things that can sometimes be repaired, but For the most part, the physical tape on the inside just sort of has an ability to deteriorate, especially if it wasn't stored properly. Whereas a disc tends to be a lot more forgiving when it comes to things like temperature and climate, humidity, that sort of thing.
How would you store a VHS properly if you wanted to preserve it?
I forget the exact numbers. We have a very long and complicated prospectus that one of our volunteers put together that was very intricate about potentially being a preservation library, where you need like a specific sort of like 68 to 72 degrees kind of thing is ideal. The humidity levels no more or less than this. Like I said, I don't remember the exact numbers offhand, but it was very specific.
Okay, so it's mainly keep them inside, keep them in a decent temperature type of thing.
Right.
Keep them away from getting moist, because over the past couple months we've had some issues at the store in terms of like roofs leaking, and sometimes when the water gets on the VHSs it can ruin them. So just trying to keep them as dry as possible, but also keeping them as temperature controlled as possible as well.
Okay. And are y'all both from Austin?
I am born and raised.
Super cool.
And so I remember going to the iHeart videos, also the Vulcan videos, and then my part of town there was something called Home Video, which there were about 3 of them. That's a little bit in what is now Northwest Austin. Back when I was a kid, it was the edge of town. It was like, you didn't, like, why are you living on? Well, it's because we wanted to get away from the city, quote unquote. But so I've been here for my whole life.
Yeah, and I was born and raised in smaller town Texas, south of Houston, Alvin and Manville.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I kind of came up at a time where we didn't, we had kind of small neighborhood video stores only. So I can remember, I think it was called Country Video in Manville. When I was about 11, 12, 13, that age, my brother's about 3 years older. So it was that age where we were going to video stores as often as we possibly could.
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up with that. And then when I was 17, 18, went to go work in Blockbuster Video at the end of high school and early college, in the next town over. And and then shortly after that moved here and became a big fan of I Love Video, as well as Vulcan Video and and the like.
So are y'all more passionate about the preservation of the physical media, or you just really love movies and it just happens to be what y'all are doing is preserving it?
Yeah, I think it's in an ideal world, it's a combination of both. I mean, if you ask any given member, they're going to have their own answer, which is kind of unique. We have that co-op spirit. No one person has the overall vision for what we should be, quote unquote. But I think in an ideal world, we're doing as much as we can to both preserve physical media as well as give a great customer experience that everybody who walks through the door is going to end up finding something they like.
Yeah. Okay.
And for me, it's love physical media, love film. Me and my friends growing up, we would have what we called button-on-a-thons. We'd start watching Friday after school. We would watch basically non-stop with tiny breaks in terms of going to the restroom. We'd watch until Sunday evening. And we would go to Home Video, I Love Video, Vulcan Video in order to get our material supplies. So I love that. But for me, this also reminds me of a small part of Austin that is gone.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, it's gone. Places like this can't survive, otherwise iHeart would have survived. And that's not any fault of their own, it's just because of the changing nature of the city. And so to have something like this that kind of speaks to an era where times and things in Austin were actually what Austin, people always talk about Austin being weird. This is actually when Austin was weird. This is when it was authentically itself. And so I just love the fact that I can come in here and anybody else who's been here for any amount of time go, wow, this is what a small slice of what it was like.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And to jump on that point, the neighborhood that we're actually in here on North Loop Boulevard was the absolute perfect spot. Not only did this location used to be Vulcan Video, but we're sandwiched between Workhorse Bar and Tiger's Pub, which has vintage clothing stores on either side of that. And it's the cool coffee shops, that sort of thing. And then right down the street we have Breakaway Records, which sells vinyl. And sort of it's felt like the perfect neighborhood where the kind of the last bastion of old Austin, as Jonathan spoke to, and there was just no better neighborhood to be in to actually like endeavor this sort of thing.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. I was about to point that out.
And we're also at the intersection of different parts of Austin in terms of Central Austin, where you have Allendale, Brentwood, Crestview.
Yep.
And then you also have McCallum High School, which is the fine arts school, won a Grammy like in 2006. And so it's we also have the old Highland Mall, which is now ACC Highland Campus. So you have a lot of big iconic things in Austin that are still kind of floating around and surviving in this town how they can.
Now this is a super cool area. Yeah. So to get your hands on one of these films, what do you need to do?
Well, first, so we're a membership-based organization. So let's say that you wanted to rent one second. Let me. Let's say that you wanted to rent. Let's say you wanted to rent Isaac Hayes' The Black Moses of Soul, which is a fantastic movie on VHS. You would come up and you'd have to get a membership. The memberships are tiered, so at the basic level we have $10 a month, and that allows you to rent one film at a time. If you want to rent more on top of that, it's $2 extra per film that you rent.
Okay.
You take it home, you enjoy it, you bring it back, and when you can bring it back, you can rent one more. Now there are different tiered levels. Like I said, the basics at $10 a month. Next one's at $18 a month. You can rent two. $30 a month you can rent three. $5 a month you can $50 a month you can rent five at a time. But also you get certain perks in terms of discounts on the merch, discounts on the micro cinema in the back. So we try to make it much more than just about the film that you're renting. We want it to be about supporting the space as well.
Yeah.
So that's basically how it works.
Absolutely. And then what if I take that home and I don't have a VHS player?
Yeah, right now, like I said, we'd love to get to a point in which we are eventually renting out VHS.
Yeah.
We'd love to get to a point to where we're eventually renting out VCR players. They're just, it's one thing they're not making more of, and it's hard to get your hands on them. So I think a lot of us, I've told my mom and other family members who still live in small towns, like if you see them at a garage sale, buy it.
That's where you can
we
get
will
them.
reimburse you.
Okay.
So we want to build that inventory up as much as possible, so that we can just rent those out, rent out VCR players, as Jonathan said, with the proper adapters to hook it up to modern TVs and be able to watch those.
But you can find them at like garage sales and maybe like a Goodwill here and there.
Yeah, I mean, you can get lucky. It's harder in Austin proper, I would say, but I think there's definitely still out there. You know, they're definitely overpriced right now online because there's been sort of this recent resurgence. You know,
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, basically, I think what's happened over the last several years is when the Netflixes of the world and the other streamers started kind of taking over, people started just kind of purging themselves of physical media. They thought, oh, I no longer need this, you know, the same way people might have gotten rid of bookshelves when Kindles and stuff came along.
Yeah.
And people just kind of assumed we were going to keep going down a path of like not needing physical media anymore. So essentially, when that purge happened, all the streaming services figured that out, and they just started raising prices and they started removing things off of it. And now there's this series of tax loopholes in which people will be, you know, streaming services figured out, oh, it's cheaper to actually like throw this movie in the trash instead of keeping it on the streaming service. We get to write that off as a business loss. Yeah. There's all these different reasons. So right now you'd have to, you know, I think you'd have to, right now I think you'd have to subscribe to about $100 plus a month of streaming services, and you would still get a little under how many titles we have in store currently.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah.
And as Beau was and as Beau was saying, some of we want to preserve all types of film. We want people to be able to like watch Isaac Hayes' The Black Moses of Soul just as much as they want to watch any other film, because we and so it doesn't matter if nobody rents this or if checks it out. We want to keep it in the space that it is. And like Beau said, if you combine all the collections out there, the streaming collections, we are at that level, and you can have access to it for $10 a month.
And then also, as new movies come out, we put out a call every month because there's people who want to donate the movie and get a little sticker that says, I donated this new copy of Barbie or Oppenheimer, or as these new movies come along, and you don't have to be subscribed to that particular streaming service. You know, for the people who want to watch Marvel and Star Wars but don't want to pay for Disney Plus every month, that should be their right to just be able to come in and check out one of these new movies on either DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah, so you're truly doing this for the people.
Oh yeah.
What is y'all's personal favorite movie in the collection?
I mean, my personal favorite movie of all time is Nightmare Before Christmas. I love it when you can see an art form perfected, and in my opinion, that is the perfection of stop animation. Just in terms of the physical making of the film itself is amazing, but also the story, the music. I'm a huge fan of musicals. A huge grown up as a kid, I used to go to musicals all the time. So it kind of checks off all the boxes, and the Venn diagram for all of my quirky idiosyncrasies, if you will, kind of overlap perfectly there.
Okay, and what year was that released?
God, that would have been 92, 93, I think.
Somewhere in there. Okay.
Yes, or early 90s, yeah.
What would be your favorite new movie, let's say 5 years or less?
That's a good question. So I used to go to the Alamo 2-3 times a week. Back when I was in high school all the way up to about 2015, 16, I would go 2 or 3 times a week. Since then, I haven't really been able to see a lot of film, partially because of the pandemic, but also just because it's getting so expensive. Like if I want to go to the Alamo and enjoy the experience, which I understand, everything's gotten expensive.
Yeah.
It can cost $50 to $70
Right.
for one person. And so, favorite film over the past 5 years. That's a good question to come back to me.
Yeah,
I'm
for
gonna think
sure.
about that,
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit to. I don't. It's hard to say my favorite movie in the collection necessarily. I mean, there's definitely what I'd consider most rewatchable movies. Stuff like The Princess Bride comes to mind.
yeah.
You know, it's like I could watch that movie every day for the rest of my life and never
Uh-huh.
get bored with it. But for me, whenever we were first opening the store and kind of getting things built and on the shelves, I remember when the thing I hadn't been able to find on streaming services for like 5 years at this point was Pump Up the Volume. It was a 1990 film with Christian Slater, and it was kind of satirizing what had become like in the 80s this boom of suburban life, and it's more poignant than I think people like give it credit for, unless you go back and rewatch it now. But whenever we had the cinema space coming together, where I built out the 25 seats here from Alamo Drafthouse and put the screen up and had the projector, and I spent my birthday putting the sound speakers up. And I said, we need to test this out. So I had about 18 friends come in, did a little BYOB, and had some snacks. And we, the 18, 19 of us just sat here and watched Pump Up the Volume to test it all out on a Friday night. And that was it's such a cool experience to be able to get to do.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to ask you the same question. Newer movie.
Man.
5 years or newer.
It's hard whenever you ask, like the best movie, because it's always a question of, like, what's the most beautiful, cinematic, impactful, or what's like the most rewatchable.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's sort of like that interesting dilemma of things that come to mind that I just think are utterly brilliant, like Get Out. I don't want to watch that more than once a year, but there may be something like Barbie that came out this summer that I'm like, man, I could watch that movie every other month, and there's just something new and unique about it. The production design, there's subtle jokes, and it's just kind of brilliant. So it's I'm always going to have that battle when I answer that question.
Okay.
And I think that Beau is spot on. I think that's one of the reasons why we have this space. You can watch whatever you want to watch whenever you want to watch it. You can watch something that's just visually stunning, like Tree of Life, just amazing. Or you can watch something that's just shoving popcorn in your mouth, just kind of vegging out and doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I love. So when you ask that question, Beau put it perfectly. What am I in the mood for? Am I in the mood for A or B or anything else? So, I still can't come up.
That's
with
a loaded question.
I mean, it was. I give an example of a couple nights ago. I've been slowly kind of bedridden. I had a surgery recently on my eye here, so I was told not to do anything strenuous, stay home, watch movies as much as possible. Which it's,
Easy.
hey, like I've spent a lifetime working up to this. Get a little stir crazy, but 2 nights ago it was the new documentary with Albert Brooks had just come out that Rob Reiner directed, and it just came out on Max. And I was like, oh man, I haven't watched some of these movies in years. So I rewatched Lost in America from 1985 and Defending Your Life with him and Meryl Streep, both written and directed by Albert Brooks. In preparation of watching that documentary. And I was like, I love going back and watching it and thinking about these films and how much more brilliant they were than anything else. And then last night, I was like, I just want to watch cheesy Christmas movies, like bad rom-coms. And I sat there and rewatched, I can't even remember the names of them. They're just sort of like Happiest Season from 2020, the Clea Duvall movie with a huge cast of awesome people. I can't remember even what the other ones were. Like, they were just like this rom-com holiday schlock. It's just so much fun, but you can kind of turn your brain off and enjoy it and smile and have a good time.
Doctor's
So
Orders.
and every and every night's going to be something different. So
I don't know if mine is 5 years, but one movie that I can't find on streaming, and I haven't been able to check the inventory here, is Tolkien. That basically the movie about Tolkien, the author of Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Just the story is amazing. His story is amazing, just in terms of how he survived the war, how language impacted him, and how it kind of helped him grow his time. I think he was at Oxford. Just stunning. Like I said, I don't know if it's within 5 years. So
So this room we're in, do y'all watch movies in here pretty regularly?
Yeah, I would say the cinema space is rented out. You on average a couple nights a week. We have
people rent it out.
Yeah, we have had an ongoing Thursday horror series in which we sell individual tickets, and then one-off events. Like, we recently had Home Alone 2 in here. We're gonna have Back to the Future and that's sort of one iteration of what we're doing is ticketed events, and then we also have a you can just rent the cinema space for whatever. We've had everything from birthdays to like company parties. We had a group in here recently that wanted to watch. Oh man, what was the movie? I forget. But so we had a group in here recently who we were like, hey, how did you guys all know each other? You asked, and they're like, oh, we're a big hiking group, and it was about 18 or so people that just hiked or do rock climbing and stuff. One night I had a couple that wanted to watch Before Sunrise, the first in that Richard Linklater series, and just the two of them. This couple has showed up. They had pizza, Mountain Death waters, whatever, and I was just like, okay. They're like, we're ready to start. And I'm like, where's the rest of your group? They're like, it's just the two of us. And I was like, it's just his birthday, and I wanted to do this for him. So we've had all sorts. I had another group that just before Thanksgiving where he's like, I'm gonna rent out the space, all of our closest friends, and at the end of when the movie's over, I'm gonna propose to my girlfriend. So we have had all sorts of versions. I couldn't even imagine some of these things until they happen, and you're kind of like, wow, that's so cool that people come up with such a unique utilization of the space.
Yeah,
I think it was either the first or one of the first things that we screened here, which we always knew the potential of the space. I mean, it's apparent once you come
certainly.
in.
Oh yeah, certainly.
But to see it in action is a different story. I remember one of the first things that we showed was a special screening of a Frasier episode, where it was a full 30, 24 minute whatever Frasier episode, but it was broken down into 12-second segments, and each of those 12 seconds had a different animator and a different animated style. Mm-hmm. And so it was in the most amazing, loving way possible. I say this, it was bonkers. It was absolutely insane. But it was just so authentic. And once we saw this space, like, it was a full packed house. It was amazing. This is something we have.
This is it.
Yeah, we also we have ongoing relationship with the UT film department and their film students, and so a lot of them each semester will make their student short films and then want to showcase them, and they'll get together and they'll overflow, sit on the ground, and pack the place as much as we legally are allowed to have in here, and no more. But they fill up the space. I mean, that's just like a fun, raucous little crowd of UT film students sitting in a VHS room. Every one of these movies were probably made well before they were born.
Yeah,
and they love it. They nerd out on all these titles that they never ever would have come across online in any sort of current iteration how our stuff exists. So it's been really unique as well, seeing that next generation of both filmmakers and just film lovers kind of be able to use the space as well.
Yeah. What do you think was your aha moment? We got to do this. We got to put this together.
Yeah, I mean, most of it happened before both of us. I mean, I think a lot of people online had been, how do we do this? How do we do this? And then, like I said, Macy and Ryan were kind of the ones to just immediately spearhead and create a Kickstarter. So for me, the aha moment was when I saw the Kickstarter, and I was like, wait,
here we go.
Yeah, this is awesome.
We already got a foundation.
And, and then as soon as there was talks of it moving into my neighborhood, I live a few blocks down the road here in the North Loop neighborhood, and I was just like, oh man, I was already like, in to help however, but now that you're in a space that needs to be completely designed from scratch, I mean, it was an empty building of concrete and roof, and that was it. And I just walked in and I said, I'm a filmmaker by trade. Primarily I make films and commercials for a living, but I also have a long background in custom woodworking. So I was like, I think I can utilize these skills and come in and just sort of like, I'll just build up the shelves and we'll kind of go from there. And that turned into I would say at least 6-7 month long endeavor until we opened, where I just kind of spent, I would say about 400-ish hours of time in here single-handedly putting together these shelves and the seats, the platforms the seats are on, and all the different iterations. It was pretty much just me and my dog, and I'd pop in some podcasts and just sort of go to town with some woodworking.
I think, and I could be wrong, Beau, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I think this entire space, 95 to 97% was built by Beau.
Wow.
It's amazing, but it looks amazing. I mean, it'd be different if it was kind of clunky, but it looks amazing. It looks professional, and that's what we want. We want to kind of present that as our vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I was like professional-ish. I won't claim that I'm like a master carpenter. It was a materials only sort of endeavor, which
Well, that's Austin. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. You know, and kind of figure it out
suits
as you
the-
go along.
yeah, it suits the town so well.
And as for me, so I figured out about this last year. I also heard about the Kickstarter. It was on Austin Chronicle. They did a story about it. And I remember when iHeartVideo closed down, a few of my friends, we were talking about, well, how could we either prevent this from happening again in the future with another local business, any kind of business, or how do we bring back some of these? And there was a little bit of talk, but it never really went anywhere. And then I saw it online last December, and I was like, okay, cool. I'll see if it pops up again. And I was driving home from downtown. I'm a professional fundraiser for nonprofits, which is my role in this. Yeah. And so I was driving home from a meeting, and I had it on NPR KUT, and I heard the story, and then right where Lamar kind of starts to bend around campus, I pulled into the T3 parking lot.
Yeah.
I sent to Facebook, I was like, hey, listen, I just heard your story on NPR. I heard you guys are opening. I want to help. Here's the information I have. Here's my history of fundraising. And when I came in the space when it was still being built out, you could see the potential. You could see what was being built. It wasn't nearly like this yet. I believe that was in either late May or early June. And it looked very different, but you could see the potential. And that was my aha moment in terms of, wow, this isn't just a few people who mean well, which we do mean well. This is the people who have a purpose, have an intent, have a drive, and want to get it done right. And I think by and large, except for a few tiny growing pains, we've done
Naturally.
miraculously in
Yeah.
terms of not only bringing people in, bringing the community in, but more importantly, preserving this collection, which is still, I think, the largest of its kind on the planet.
That's crazy. That's truly crazy. Are there other people out across the country that y'all work with that you're like, hey, what do y'all do in this situation?
There's people who can chip in different ways. I mean, out of us, we're only 2 of the 5 board members, and one of the 5 outside of Macy and Ryan is Sam, who's by trade is a graphic designer and kind of has like that sort of online branding. So he's done all of our the things you see that we wear tend to come. I mean, this is Super Yaki, who we've collaborated with Super Yaki for people who know that stuff. But a lot of our graphics, our hats, a lot of our design work, when you just see anything online, comes from volunteers like Sam or other volunteers who are working with him. So that's definitely one of the ways in which people can contribute remotely, in addition to just I don't know the numbers. I don't know if we know the numbers offhand, but the amount of contributors we have who don't live here at all. I mean, I know I have friends and family who are like, I'll give $10 a month even though I can't go rent anything, just in support of the idea of this.
Yeah, it is a cool idea.
But in terms of working with any larger organizations, we do have supporters across the country, which is beyond amazing. But outside of that, we do work with, like, Sam has his own company where he does graphics design work. We're pretty self-sufficient and independent in terms of doing what we do day to day. Now we hope to change that because in order to achieve our goals in terms of expanding, maybe getting a second location, we will need help from the state, from cities, from governments, but also from other corporations, because there should be more of this. There should be more. What we have out here is fantastic, but like I said earlier, we still have over 100,000 individual units stuck in boxes, and the only way we can expand is by getting more of our community to support us, whether that's corporate, whether that's government, whether that's foundations, whether that's individuals, whatever it is, because when we bring it all together, we can, and we already have achieved miraculous things. When we bring it all together, when everyone comes together, when the community says, this is important to us, this is something that we value, this is something we want to invest in, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and I think our entire collaborative is made up of optimistic-minded people who came in and said, yes, this can be done. But I think there's, not to say people are cynical necessarily, but there is a cynicism around whether this was a sustainable model. So I think this first year or so, especially, is just kind of proof of sustainability. Anywhere from an individual to an institution would question whether or not this could actually work. So right now we're showing it work, and showing it can continue to work. So I think that will help the growth that Jonathan's speaking of. So the more support we have early on now, the more likely we are to eventually get as far as we want to get to in a time that makes sense.
We're building the foundations here. Which and speaking of that, my partner, she joked, and she loves this store, by the way. She's come in a few times. She's fully supportive of it. She joked that this is the museum of defunct technology, like antiquated technology. I'm like, you know what? we'll wear that like a badge.
Yeah, exactly.
Because again, it's still here, it's still alive, and we're very proud of it.
Yeah, super cool. And I love how the community is buying into it as well. Yeah. And in true Austin fashion, what is y'all's favorite breakfast taco?
Oh, God, I gotta go with the steak, Gouda, and cheese from Taco Joint.
Where's that at?
There's 2 locations. There's one right off campus, North Campus, and then the other one on Riverside and Congress.
Because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, steak, Gouda, and I said yes, smoked Gouda. Yeah,
smoked Gouda.
Yeah, steak and smoked Gouda.
That sounds amazing.
So I'm vegetarian.
Okay.
So I don't imbibe in the meats, if you will. I have a favorite, but I also have favorite location throughout town. So for me, and people are surprised when they hear this, but Dan's Hamburgers has some of the best working class breakfast tacos in the city. Potato, egg, and cheese.
Really?
It is fantastic. Now you're not going to get anything fancy like no barbacoa, no cilantro, none of that fancy. Can I curse on this? No, none of that fancy shit.
Yeah.
It is a working class potato, egg, and cheese breakfast taco, but it is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Taco Shack because where I went to high school, the first Taco Shack was right down the road, and we would go there every morning before school when we would get breakfast tacos. So I love breakfast. I love Taco Shack. Valencia tacos are fantastic. Veracruz tacos are magical. So those would be my 4 titans of tacos, if you will. And there's other stuff out there that's great and fantastic. Yeah. Not disparaging any of that, but if I had to pick one breakfast taco in the city, it'd be Dan's breakfast tacos. Dan's Hamburgers.
Add me to your list of those people that's surprised, because I would have never thought Dan's Hamburgers for breakfast tacos.
No idea.
And again, it's nothing fancy. If you want just something party and get the job done,
straight to the point.
Oh, absolutely, brilliant.
Super cool. Well, guys, thank you for having me out to your collection of films, whether it be on DVD and VHS. Yeah, thank you again for having me out, and I hope people can come out and see what y'all have put together. I hope this thing grows, because like you said, this is only a 1/6 of the collection. I would love to see what y'all have in boxes and in storage. So I hope this takes off for you, and we'll be filming at another location in the near future.
This is how we continue to maintain and sustain this, by getting the word out throughout the community, by telling people about it.
Exactly, that's what we're trying to do here.
And by bringing the community to us. We're here, we're proud of it. We're going to be here for a long time, but the only way we can maintain and sustain that is if we have stuff like this go on, if we have people come to this and say, this is something that is worth protecting and worth sustaining.
Well, I might have closed out a little early. Let me ask you one more question. How would someone donate?
Yeah, so I was going to say, in addition to becoming a sustaining member, you can also donate, and your actual straight donations are a tax write-off because we're a 501c3. So if anyone goes to welovevideo.org, and that's LUV, or looks us up on social media, there will be links that kind of show you where you can just straight up donate as a tax write-off, and that is one of the absolute best things you can do, because that money goes every dollar will 100% go right back into developing everything we're doing here.
Yeah.
And then also, in addition to that, spreading the word. Like what you guys are doing here, which helps us spread the word on social media. Go follow us on Instagram, share our posts, let your friends know, because I'm still running into people every day in Austin who should have heard of us by now, and they see a shirt or a hat or something, or and they're like, I love movies. I used to go to other video all the time. I had no idea you guys were even in existence. So just spreading that word in any way you can. Anyone can do that with a social media profile.
And it gives people hope in terms of if something was lost for whatever time period, for whatever reason, it says, we can do this. We can do this again.
Yeah.
Because we all have our specialties in terms of what we do. None of us have ever run a video store. None of us have ever, even so, I've worked in nonprofits. I've never helped run a nonprofit. So it's amazing what we can do when we work together.
Well, I can really feel the passion from y'all about this project. This is awesome. Thank you. And once again, thank you for having me out. I really, really liked what y'all got going on here. And find them online, find them on social media. Come check it out. This is very Austin, very Austin vibe. So if you ever have any visitors in town, you want to take them to something that encapsulates Austin, bring them here.
Yeah, this whole neighborhood's perfect for just walking around and seeing what Austin used to be.
Yeah.
And that's how we keep the love alive.
Yeah. Keep the love alive. I love it. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Please remember to follow and review.